The Veiled Woman. The Orbit of Maryam, May 2020, Chapter 3.2 by LILLAH. Peace be upon Maryam AS, who was known for her chastity. But chastity for a woman isn't the same as it is for a man, because we are wired very differently in terms of our sexuality. Yet as humans, we tend to project our pathologies onto each other. As a result, Muslim sisters can't understand the struggles of Muslim brothers, while male scholars describe chastity as merely holding oneself back in terms of baser urges. Yes, it is true for women, as we also have needs, maybe not as simple or as painfully strong as men. However, for women, it's more complicated than that. For men, sex is the end-all, be-all. It's that thing, that goal, that final destination, that beyond that, there's not much else to get excited about. Men will choose sex over almost everything else. And for this reason, the hurun of Jannah are mentioned regarding the eyes. Men are subconsciously attracted to dilated pupils without knowing it. It's been tested and proven, but you'll never say, or you'll never hear a man say, check out the dilated pupils on that lady. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created man, thus gave him his preference and spoke to his subconscious without him knowing it. So he is motivated extra while reciting the Quran, but not provoked by other descriptions while reciting. The Prophet Muhammad was more straightforward regarding the birds and bees, but his quotes aren't recited in Salah. Jannah wouldn't be Jannah for most men if it had no woman. They even did an experiment where they asked young males, what if they could have one thing in Jannah, what would it be? If they could have one thing in Jannah, what would it be? And they all said, woman. The young ladies in the other class gave a variety of answers, from chocolate to romance to fashion. They all had different answers. Chastity for women isn't just as much about not having sex as it is for males. For a female, sex isn't the end-all be-all. It's attention, or another way to put it, validation, regarding her appeal. This has even been verified on as mainstream a platform as the old Oprah Winfrey Show. Experts have confirmed this and testify that often women will show off and draw attention to themselves for no other reason but to get confirmation that they are desirable. It is therefore safe to say that chastity for a woman isn't just about avoiding haram sex, but it's about challenging and continuously blocking oneself from self-exposure to be more attractive to others. Dressing to please the world is the same as worshipping it, and as much as a pious man holds himself back from the temptation of promiscuity, so too is a pious woman just as firm in fighting her temptations. And when we women are weak, we subconsciously and consciously find ways to draw attention to ourselves as if to seek validation from others. That's what hits the spot for a woman, and with a quick attachment style, problems arise unless she deliberately checks herself. She needs to be like a hawk with her behavior and ask herself, why is she posting a picture of herself with a duck face as opposed to an impersonal profile picture? When she posts other images, is she trying to create an impression on her wall, or is she willing to scar the glamour with the ugly truth about Yemen, Palestine, and other places with similar distress? If her scarf is off her neck and shoulders, then is it to look more attractive for the world, or is it convenient and appropriate for the place she's in? If she is wearing a niqab and completely covering herself, then is that too for attention, to show off her religiousness, or is she using it to fight her own baser urges? Having said this, it's a good idea for a woman to go on a diet of consciousness by cutting out all social platforms for a period of time and focusing on her internal reality with the Creator, which often requires a lot of headspace. It's a good idea for a woman to simplify her calendar and focus on a few good friends and distance herself from toxic people who don't add value to her inner being. And for the same reason, it's an even better idea for a woman to find a soft, quiet place to be silent, be still, be aware, whether she is an extrovert or introvert. She needs the retreat to connect to her core and feel that haven cocoon her against a world that just wants to strip her bare, expose her, laugh at her, tease her, grope her, and take a piece of her sacred flesh through exploitation and abuse. The same world that judges her weight and what she is wearing. Maryam AS contemplates connected to her Creator, uninterrupted by the world, until her space is gently visited by her obliging guardian, who enters the space respectively to add value to her consciousness, which is already pure and growing. He tells her stories of her ancestors, the prophets, and their relationships with their Lord and the great miracles that bore fruit from their faith. She gains ilm, which means knowledge from the root alima, to know. But this isn't the tedious list of information that sits in the head, but the knowing that changes who someone is. Allah is Rabbi Alameen. God is Lord of the worlds, with the root of the alimin being alima, meaning to know. So God is the Lord of all experienced realities and all consciousness. Zakaria alayhi salam, through his ministry, recites to her information that awakens her energetic quarantine. Not only does she have this opportunity to think about the former prophets and ancestors, but to have a deeper appreciation of their link to her as part of her family legacy. Many people can feel the link of their forefathers in some sort of cellular memory, but perhaps she did too. Allahu alam. What fantastic dreams she may have had. She had the opportunity to envision their journey, rest, meditate, pray and focus until she starts to sway with cells and osmosis. Think of the rabbis at the Wailing Wall circling and students of Quran swaying as they recite. She grows up in the state. She might have been aware of her community, having watched them from behind the screen, and she may have observed how they treated her relatives, especially Zakaria alayhi salam, who was always on the fringes. She knows about the harsh laws, and especially those against women, but she has the sanctuary built for her, and she may have felt more secure. She was tucked away from the eye that judges and envies or looks upon with lust. Perhaps her uncle warned her to be careful of others since he had first-hand experience with their hypocritical treachery. The more we cultivate modesty, the more we draw near to Allah, even if we're not 100% perfect. Perfection is for Allah only. For us, it's progress. I had a friend who was molested as a child, and because her sense of inhibition was taken from her, she became an easy target later when men tried to lure her into situations that most women would have had an instinct about. But she had experienced a new normal, so she struggled to see each man for what he was, and would naively let him get too close. Before she knew it, something again would happen, and she had to rely on consciousness to make better decisions. Although she was half-naked yoga instructor describing herself as an agnostic and quite comfortable with nudity, she could appreciate the logic of very practical applications regarding hijab and boundaries as deterrents on various levels. On a macro level, it reduces the statistics, not only because perverts are sex-mad to the point of stupidity and are less inclined to harass women when they don't see them properly, but because there is an overall culture of not just covering oneself through that renewing one's inhibition and shyness as guidance. This is wholesome therapy for the woman who has been stripped and used. She experiences the love of her Lord as she is swaddled in her veil like a nurtured newborn, or in her case, born again in faith. A woman needs that quiet space that softly insulates her spirit, that safe space where she can, in the depth of silence, speak to her Creator, whispering into her devoted heart with the intimacy that all women crave but can never find with a man. In the same meditative stillness, she is blessed with the sacred romance that other women run circles for but never find among the men of the world. The devoted, although boring, to watch is never bored. She is stimulated by inspiration, content, and satisfied. She has found the love of her life. Not only does she sit in her room, covered from public view, with her mind protected from the self-conscious worry of how she may be perceived, she has more space in her mind to cultivate a greater appreciation for the greater glory of God, as there is no limit to that contemplation and the growth of the soul that shines in that remembrance. And yet this amazing and profound king is also a familiar friend, with who she can feel comfortable, such as his Rahim, his mercy that is deeply personal and special. She gets to indulge in what child stars of Hollywood are denied, and that she gets to just be her true spiritual self, free of a stroked ego and critique that distracts from progress and the truth of La ilaha illallah. It is God that is the creator of what men want to exploit with no regard to dignity and honor. After Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam alayhi salam, and before he breathed life into him, the shaitan entered and traveled through Adam's body and through various organs to explore. This highlights the disrespectful and voyeuristic quality of shaitan. We see the same quality manifest in porn addiction, harassment, molestation, peeping Tom activities, and to a lesser degree, tabloid news paparazzi, gossip, reality TV, and public mocking of other people's appearances and behavior. This total lack of discretion has been inspired by no other than the devil himself, and all forms of this are illegal. Hence, a man is told by Allah to guard his gaze. Women are told to cover themselves in the Quran, and universally the best therapy for a formerly exploited woman is to exercise her spiritual consciousness in compensation for inhibition lost. The more she cultivates a closeness to her beloved Creator, the more she feels protected because she is cultivating a bond with the Creator, not just that, but the Protector. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He doesn't change a person's position until there is an inner change. So it makes sense that when a woman focuses on her feeling of being swaddled in loving security while exercising the veil and focusing on her Lord, that this will manifest. The veil alone is not enough without the remembrance. He who created woman, who loves woman more than man loves her, and who instructed woman to adopt the veil, also said that if anyone hurts a close friend of his, then he will declare war on that person. No one is a close friend of Allah except through basic worship with extra devotion until the Lord becomes the sight, the hearing, and the movement of that person. How true was this for Maryam AS, and does this exist in degrees for everyone else? Can we be on the trajectory towards this closeness even though we are nowhere near the level of devotion? Does it not then make sense to start improving this area irrespective of our past and despite our inhibition lost? Do we not benefit from activating our consciousness through behavior that leads to cognitive skillfulness and spiritual improvement? Is our Lord not the forgiving, comforting, the bringer of peace that leads to healing and closure, and most merciful and most gracious? When are we going to allow ourselves to feel that? Allah doesn't look at our bodies or our shapes, but our hearts and deeds. Since our weight is nobody's business, more reason to cover the body to protect it from judgment, since we are entitled to better. And since we are on the subject of weight, is it not better from a health perspective to be 10 kilos overweight instead of 20 kilos overweight? Is it better to be closer to the BMI instead of being nowhere near it? People have too much of an all or nothing mentality, while simple wisdom dictates that it's better to cultivate a healthy lifestyle with low weight being the inevitable byproduct of that. So aim bigger and let smaller things fall into place. So just as much as fitness and health regime is the most effective if moderate and sustainable for life, the same can be said for religion. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, the two most important things in faith are to believe in God and be consistent. Consistency is the key to not only outward improvement, but internal as well. Here woman feels her power as a being, as essence, as energy, so much so that the Prophet ﷺ gave a severe warning to women about cursing and favorably compared them on another occasion to perfume and the mist one experiences after prayer. He also said that Allah is beauty and loves beauty and lofty things. So women aren't encouraged to be unattractive or let themselves go. That isn't modesty, but modesty is the covering of beauty. It is therefore recommended that woman takes care of herself and then exercises discretion in her dress and manner. It makes sense for a woman of faith to be lovely, soft, and feminine, but what doesn't make sense is that she squanders her energy in seeking the world's approval and lowers herself to be more attractive to mere mortals. To recap and repeat the significance of little Maryam's journey, a little girl with the genetic code of the legacy of those who maintained the temple of worship is born to a devout woman who has made her intention and raises her accordingly. She was prepared at a young age to embrace her role and still had the added inspiration and guidance from her kind uncle and prophet Zakaria alayhi salam, who also acted like an elderly foster father to her in the holiest of temples. We're not going off topic by mentioning Buddha. The Buddha was a man who led a spiritual movement of detachment after living a life of exclusive indulgence within his elite class at the expense of the masses. He concluded that to rectify the social injustice and suffering, man would have to disconnect from the addictions of life. He intended to deny himself the English chase of satisfaction, which was typical of the pagans like those seen of the Indo-European religion that stretched from Western Europe over Greco-Rome, the Arab lands, and settled in India, taking the form of later Hindu sects. First, he set out to challenge himself, like the other mystics, by starving, not bathing, and subjecting himself to homelessness and difficulty, but found this lifestyle too restrictive and harsh, thus distracting from the higher self and, as a result, unsustainable. As with all growth of skills, a system that can be repeated until death, this is the ideal. There is no better exercise for your body than the one you enjoy, because you will see the results with that if you persist. Likewise, when a man approached the Prophet Muhammad and asked what was the most important thing in religion, he said, believe in God and be consistent. So the Buddha figured out by himself, so to speak, that it's better to cultivate the inner self through a lifestyle meditation that is moderate, accessible, and that one can persist in the long run. It boiled down to minimalism and simplicity that decluttered the mind and brought him closure and bliss, contentment, and the enlightenment of lightening oneself of baggage and heavy emotion that is attached to the obligations of the worldly life. The satisfaction that is the very definition of wealth in Islam, when one sits in gratitude and whose heart sighs, I'm okay. This is a truth connected to the fitra, the innocent or natural state of man, which is connected to nature and the universe. Was this the nirvana he and his followers were referring to? According to a tradition, he was summoned by a lord in the heavens to teach what he had discovered to others. Was he a prophet or a wise man like Luqman? Only Allah knows, and would know better, that the message and its effects are more important. Either way, he felt compelled to share this quiet yet profound truth, and attracted a lot of followers, and at the very least taught them the meaning of La ilaha. There is no God, as in that society and its attachments should not have a hold on oneself. Advanced Muslims and skilled Buddhists have this much in common in terms of cultivating that sharp and chiseled inner self while creating depth, height, and expansion in the spiritual growth, which is often accompanying this space of detachment found in a simple lifestyle. My best understanding of detachment is the story of a sheikh teaching his class about Islam, as in there's no God but God, and someone came in to notify him that his boat sank in the harbor. He paused, looked down, looked up, and said, Alhamdulillah, praise be to God. A little while later, that same man came into the classroom and said that he was mistaken and that it wasn't his boat that sunk. Again, he paused, looked down, looked up, and said, Alhamdulillah. When his lesson was over, his students asked why he said that on both occasions, to which he replied that on both occasions he found that his heart was unmoved. This demonstrates the moral of detachment, and that is, detachment isn't that you don't own something, but that something doesn't own you. He owned a boat, but he wasn't owned by it. This is what the Buddhist, Muslim scholars, and some Christians, especially monastics, and in the very early days were striving to achieve in themselves through religious practices. This includes a lack of possession, so when they take a vow of poverty, what they really mean is a vow of minimalism. Islam rightfully does not encourage the monasticism of men and women except on specific occasions and conditions. We can appreciate with the intention towards abstinence that through mindful living that inhales the simple glory of natural life and the capacity it's sustained through both contemplative and focal point meditation. It was through this intention of abstinence that the Buddha had some initial reservations about accepting female followers who wanted to join him, but he relented, and like the later Christians, he set up separate groups for the genders. Here we see a common thread of people so dedicated to living a life of devotion that they forsake marriage, sex, and children, among other worldly pursuits, to focus. In Islam, we intend to reconcile the religious devotion and the skillfulness to the worldly life and vice versa, while dedicating the whole life and all its facets to the Creator. Without the leverage of another trade or resource, there are justifications and temptations to deviate in the faith to accommodate basic functions of survival, and perpetual abstinence with no marriage creates other problems and challenges. Some are unable to fulfill that covenant, like the Buddhist monk who was beaten by other monks for having intercourse with a woman, and the adultery rate of priests is supposedly 70%. I'm skeptical as to how the statistic was determined, but let's face it, where there's smoke, there's fire. I've seen elderly priests having meals or coffee with very old women from the parish, almost as if to just have that feeling of female companionship or feminine energy in their spaces. This is where the veil or the screen comes in handy. The veil on various levels becomes important. Even the Druidic priestesses had screens between them and the men they were consulting. The same screens seen in churches and similar to the ones described relating to the wives of the Prophet and mothers of the believers when they consulted other men in the early Muslim community. Devoted Druidic women also had head veils similar to the saris of India, while Jewish women have their head coverage for synagogue. So the Amish have theirs, nuns have the habits, Buddhist nuns shave their heads but also draw their cloaks over their chests, and of course, Muslim women have their hijab, which means cover. And has a Christian woman ever wondered why she wears a veil for her wedding, which has been reduced to some decorative gimmick? And of course, how could we forget the most iconic veiled lady of them all, Mary, Mother of Jesus, the very personification of chastity for both Christians and Muslims. She is the keeper of the Rahim and the powerful mercy that funnels through her. She must focus herself and focus on it to be successful. It is not only her maternal soul that needs its cover, it's its veil, its shade to grow in quiet peace, nurtured and fed by an earthly connection to nature and her natural self. But the baby in the womb goes through stages. Over 1400 years ago today, the Quran described the stages of darkness in the womb in describing where man came regarding the report of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He came from a sediment like mixed clay that the nutfa comes into contact with. It's similar to what dentists use when getting a mold of the teeth. This happens in the fertilized egg, which latches into the wall of the rahim, the uterus, and becomes an alaq. Alaq, an attachment, then changes into a mutqa, something that resembles something chewed, then goes through the idhan phase of developing bones and skeleton, then cloaked with flesh, lahim, which increases with the growth. So from here, the Quran describes the veils of darkness. In Surah Az-Zumar, he makes you in the wombs of your mothers in stages, one after another, in 3 veils of darkness. This refers to the abdominal wall with many layers of muscle, etc., the uterus walls, and the membrane. Let's pause and appreciate. The fetus in Arabic is Jannah, with its root in the word Jannah, which means to hide, to cover, or to veil. Another word that comes from the same root is jinn, because they are unseen people or energies. Then another word that shares this root is Jannah, which means garden, because unlike a forest or jungle, it is an enclosed area that is hidden and veiled with enclosures. It's interesting to note that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that Jannah is at the feet of mothers and that the mother has 3 times the authority of the father. Is it because she carried the man when he was a Janin in her womb, Rahim, then bore him, then raised him? So there is a theme with the veil both symbolically and behaviorally. It seems the purity of chastity in terms of seeking discretion blesses the growth of both the baby and maternal soul, so much so that Mr. Michel Odent, a French obstetrician and advocate for natural birth, discusses the importance of privacy for a mother. He says, and I quote, "She needs to feel unobserved. When you consider birth as an involuntary process involving old mammalian structures of the brain, you set aside the assertion that a woman must learn to give birth. It is implicit that one cannot actively help her to give birth. The goal is to avoid disturbing her." End quote. Interference creates anxiety in women in all areas of her life. And it's also especially felt with breastfeeding, where the medical staff are too invasive and then wonder why so many women prefer bottle feeding, because the experience of breastfeeding becomes associated with a demanding nurse, creating a subtle PTSD in the subconscious. How much has the world's interference with our dress and physique contributed to our anxiety and held us back? How much have the eyeballs affected us, and how many ways encouraged us to seek attention to make us uncomfortable, constantly challenging our connection to our fitra state? It's within the protective veil that woman can funnel freely her maternal power as a spiritual authority, and no woman has demonstrated this more beautifully and better than the mother of Jesus, when she became, through the greatest miracle of all, a single mother.